All right, let me let people in. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Okay, there's someone on the phone.
Yeah, so we're getting people. If you'd like, start your video if you want. If you don't have to, everyone, but we like seeing faces.
Hello? This is funny.
Yeah, well, just leave it for now. I'll.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll see. I think we have a few more signups and then we can start. So we'll give it a minute.
Look, do you see who's on? Janice is on.
Yeah.
Oh, Janice is on. Oh, yes.
Feel free to put your
Oh,
video
she's
on
on
if you
mute,
want.
though. And so is Sasha. Oh, everybody's on mute.
You have to, people have to unmute themselves. I can't unmute.
I wonder if I can unmute. Hi, Janice.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
No.
Hi, Janice. Janice, can you hear me? It's Marcia.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Well, we're having a trouble with Claudia being able to, she can hear us, but we can't hear her, which is why she's got the phone so I can translate.
Look on the lower left of your screen. Is there a mute button?
No, the lower left where it's on.
Wait a minute, how could Jan?
Okay, so I think we can start because I think everyone that signed up is here. Hi, everyone. I'm Jocelyn from the library. Thank you so much for coming. Feel free to, if you want to put your cameras on, it's nice to see people's faces so we know who's here, but you don't have to. I want to thank Marcia Rosen and Claudia Riess for being here. I'll give a very brief introduction so we can get to the good stuff. Marcia is an author of, among other things, The Senior Sleuths, Dying to Be Beautiful, and Gourmet Gangster Mysteries. Her characters, Dick and Dora Zimmerman, are, well, she'll tell you about them. Her interest in crime is, well, she'll tell you about that too, based on her childhood, which I'm sure she'll mention. Marcia writes under the name M. Glenda Rosen, and you can see more about Marcia at theseniorsleuths.com. Claudia Riess has worked in the editorial department of The New Yorker and at Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston. She now writes art history mysteries. Two of the titles are Stolen Light and False Light, and they feature sleuths Erica Shawn and Harrison Wheatley, who are an art magazine editor and an art history professor. So I think that's enough from me. Very excited to have them here and very happy to have them here. And I'll hand this over to Marcia.
Okay, so I think we should explain. I just want to let everyone know that there is a problem for some reason that Claudia I need to tell her, if you ask questions, I need to tell her what they are. Somehow she can't hear, so what the participants are saying. But Claudia and I are both published by Level Best Books, which publishes strictly mystery books. And I actually had grown up around some interesting characters, thanks to my father's particular occupation as a bookie. So I got to be around some interesting people, which is part of where I was able to develop characters in my mysteries. But I've always been fascinated by mysteries in terms of liking to put puzzles together and just creating, things that could happen and finding what the solutions are. And my favorite, my favorite have always been on television have been mysteries. I love the British mysteries and the Hallmark movie mysteries, not as much as the British or Acorn mysteries. So I always found that very fascinating. And from that, always wanting to writing a lot for my business and agency. And from that, more and more writing books. And actually, it's very interesting that Janice is on. Oh, she just got her photo on, but Janice and I've worked together many, many years. And for years, she edited my work for my agency in particular. and I always had a favorite story, and then I'll have Claudia tell you about hers. Is that there were many years ago that one time where Claudia, Janice and I were working together, and again, she's got a great skill set in editing, which I don't. But she gave me the Strunk and Wagner, or whatever it was, book about editing as a gift. And I just stood there and looked at her and I said, I love you a lot, but you know I'm not going to use this. So I just like handed it back and she laughed at any rate. So that's just a brief introduction. And I think, you know, we've done a lot in terms of writing mysteries. But the things Claudia and I also talked about is that it's very different. Our styles are very different. Our plots are different. Our characters are different. And I love something, well, I've written about what, you know, writing mysteries, it's not a mystery. Claudia's developed something that I thought is really fascinating called, you know, the anatomy of murder mysteries. So Claudia, maybe you want to, if you can hear me, so they
Yeah.
can hear you. So I think if you don't need to have the phone by you when you're talking, but if
I know, but I need to have it when I'm hearing, so.
right, so I just want to say to you that I think if now you could just introduce yourself and, you know,
Sure.
about the anatomy of you know,
Oh, okay,
writing
well,
murder
okay,
mysteries.
how why
Okay,
I'm
how you-
interested in my field of art history mysteries.
Okay,
Okay, it's, um, well, I've always been interested in art. It's almost in my DNA. I was taken to museums in Manhattan and Brooklyn at a very early age. My brother, in fact, was influenced by all of this by becoming an art historian himself, an art history professor. And it's a fascinating field. It goes from sublime to crime. From the most lofty inspirations to the basest. And I mean, it's filled with all kinds of criminal activity, forgery, of course, ransom, laundering money. It's very easy to use art as to launder money. And primarily the main reason why this is possible, why it can be such a chaotic field and black market as well, is because it's totally unregulated. The price of art basically depends on the whims of dealers, very wealthy collectors. And I can't imagine any other field with the total freedom that is in the
I
art.
think one of the things that would be interesting that maybe both of us could talk about is, you know, how we develop our plots, how we
Sure.
develop our characters. So maybe if Claudia does that first, and then I could talk a little bit about how I develop them, because there are different kinds of mysteries, and I don't know if any of the participants are looking to write mysteries or just love mysteries, but you know, there's thrillers and there's cozies, and people can ask what they are. Cozies are, you know, like Murder She Wrote, you know, that it's not somebody who is, that's actually their work, but, and you know, there's noir and there's crime and just basic detectives. So
Yeah. Well, if we talk about some of the similarities of our mysteries,
I think that's a good idea. Maybe if
yeah,
you want to talk.
I mean,
Okay.
well, I'll start off with one thing, and then maybe you could go on, and that is open with a bang. Have a murder. If you're going to have a murder, have it early on in the book, not on page 85. And the first mystery I wrote, my murder was at around page 100. So what I did was I took a piece of it, put it in the prologue, and then began the first chapter 3 weeks earlier. And Robin Cook, for instance, the medical mystery writer, I'm sure everybody's heard of him. He always begins with a prologue in which somebody dies from some horrible thing. And
actually, so
and-
do I. I always start with somebody
start.
being murdered in some bizarre way. Yeah.
And you you with your the headless the bodiless head in
Right.
in the salon's sink.
Yes.
That got people going right away.
Yes, that was in Dying to Be Beautiful. And
Yeah. So I mean, it's important
right.
about, bringing out some sort of excitement at the beginning or towards the beginning. It's a necessity for all mystery, I think.
But I think again, people are listening. If you look at some of the mystery shows, the old Columbo series, the old Columbo series, that the murder was always, they always showed the murder in the beginning, and then the whole rest of the hour and a half was, he knew who the murderer was by going after that. If you look at some of the British television, like Midsummer Murder, there's always a murder in the beginning. The British murder mysteries always have often have 3 or 4 murders. It's really interesting.
Yes.
I think my books tend to have several murders as well. So
Yeah, mine too.
right, and I think like Claudia's saying, so are hers. But I think there's different things that inspire us, but it's part of maybe describing how we write them. I know some people write whether it's a mystery or they write, in a very, or any other kind of way. They write it in a
Marcia?
very organized way. So Claudia, how do you want to describe how it's really hard. I hear myself talking. It's really funny.
I know, I know, and it's I don't know.
All right, so do you,
I'm so sorry. I mean,
I write really in a very
I'm apologizing,
organic way.
but I'm not sure what I'm apologizing for.
Do you write in an organic way, or do you really plan ahead a lot when you write?
Well, I have to plan ahead. I do write organically when I'm writing basically action dialogue and any kind of love romance between my characters, because I do write a hybrid mystery. It's sort of a romantic suspense or a suspenseful romance. So when I'm writing dialogue and things, and the action between characters, I do write organically, but I have to plan ahead because there's so many, gears and things going on. And I want to maintain a certain veracity with history, with actual facts. What I do is I take a situation that actually existed, possibly in the past, and with sort of a 6 degrees of separation sort of thing, I put 2 characters together who existed. In the case of in the case of Nightlight, it's.
But I think in any of your books that that I've read, the 3 in the series and the other books, is I think that Claudia probably does more planning than I do. What I do is mine's very organic. Mine's very. I know that there's going to be a murder in the beginning. There's no doubt. It opens with the murder, and I know that, of course, who the main characters are, and I know that at the end, the murders are going to be solved one way or another. My Senior Sleuth's characters are very much like the old Thin Man movie series, if any of you have seen that. So I think depending on, for any of you, what kind of books you're writing, if you're writing a murder mystery or a romance or some other fiction, there's people who have to just totally outline the book. And that's just really fine. It's kind of like what works best for you. So, I think like Claudia is saying, she has more, I think, more organized and which is.
You haven't seen my desk.
And I haven't seen her desk, but her books are organized. Do we have any questions? I think that might be great if anybody wants to ask something that relates more to what they're doing. Yes. Do you want to?
Yeah, I wanted to ask how much planning do you put into, I mean, I understand Claudia writes about art history and has prior knowledge to that, but how much research and time do you put into like the environment and the setting? And, for example, like if I were to be writing a cozy British mystery from here on Shelter Island, you have to get not only geography correct, but like the tone of the language. And so how much of that, how much time or percentage of your writing do you think goes into that?
So Claudia, Jennifer really wanted to know like how much time goes into the planning and the thinking and the preparation, especially for.
And from the last part, how much do I go into the details of either the time, the place, and
Right.
getting things right? Yes. Yeah. Well, it's especially difficult when I'm not going to be in the actual setting of a book. So I have to read a lot about it and sort of put myself into it. And I try and put in a detail or two. And if my character is also thinking about something and relating what the milieu that he or she is in to his or her own personal life, it gives it more of a truthful tone to it. It's a little bit of a cheat, I guess. It's like when you wear Jimmy Choo shoes and fake earrings, people will assume that the earrings are correct, but you can't overdo it. As an example, when I was writing my last book, there was a scene at a Paris airport, and I had an editor look at this, and she said, sometimes when you know a place so well, when you're familiar with a place so well, people write about it too much. And I said, I've never been there. So you can exude, so you have to be careful. But I do try and get the character of a place. But I think when you relate that character of a place to an individual, you give it more reality. It sounds more truthful.
I think the thing that I do more of the research on, Jennifer, is, I've been writing about places that are very familiar to me, whether it takes place in New York or Long Island or other places. The things that I've done a lot of research for on the mysteries that I'm writing are things that relate to, is if I'm writing about there's a sheriff or a detective or the main, what is it called? What is the head detective or sheriff called in Las Vegas, or what's the head one called? How do they find, how are the coroners, what are the coroners' names? So I really look back at a lot of what some of those details are that relate to the murder and solving the murder, and that there's there's certain organizations that are research and help find lost teenagers, for example. So I do a lot of research about that. I think that, like the same as Claudia, I think it's really important to be authentic. If people are reading it and they're looking, I can imagine that I'd be writing something about New York or Long Island. And again, Janice, who I knew very well for years, could look at it and say that, no, that's not at all right. And there would be many other people like that. So I think, it's a good question you're asking. And I think it's important that we try to be as authentic as possible. Some other questions?
I have a question.
Great.
Do you think the plot leads the characters, or do the characters create the plot? Like, what comes first? How does that work? Jocelyn
wants to know, does the plot create the characters, or the characters create the plot? So which way do you think it works for you, Claudia?
work both ways. I think it could work both ways because the characters are, especially my two sleuths who have a romantic relationship, and actually they're now married. So when there's some sort of trouble between them, a personal situation, or somebody has had some kind of accident or misadventure, that in turn will enter into the mystery plot itself. Like one of my characters had a tragic event occur, and she was taking, in the mystery itself, a lot more risk than she ordinarily would, to escape it, to give herself purpose. And her husband was very angry, frightened, frustrated that she was taking these risks. So it works its way into the story. And of course, they get into problems because of the situation they can get themselves entangled in, and that in turn affects the internal life, the arc of their story, of the personal story. So it works.
I think it's the same thing. I think the plot, I think that my characters are just, you know, they're just certain types of characters, and I know that they're going to get in trouble because that's the purpose of writing these particular mysteries. So I want my characters to be involved with certain activities. I always like my last book on the senior sleuths really gets them involved with elder abuse. So I always bring something like that in so that there's some kind of message or feeling about that. But there's a couple other things about, you know, writing mysteries that I think are valuable and that we could talk to or ask about. One is it's really kind of known that like a good mystery often will have humor in it, that there's something about the humor that really helps. It doesn't have to be funny or a lot, but some humor also really helps. And then there was something that I had read that it was like, what is the secret to a great mystery? And the thing that was the comments, the responses were of what's the secret to a great mystery is something that makes you feel. So, I mean, when you're reading it, does it make you feel angry? Does it make you feel like you'd like to know these characters, or does it make you feel like you really like to read more about them? And that's, I think, something like a good series, like the series that Claudia is writing. The characters, you just want to keep knowing what these characters are doing, which is why I'll throw this in that her publisher has asked her to write 3 more in the series. So maybe you could
Nightlight, by the way, is supposedly coming out in a couple of weeks, I heard.
Okay, good.
It's KN.
But, you know, the thing is, in terms of what do you think? I mean, what do you think you do that makes your characters feel, you know, important or matter, that would make anyone be interested in them?
Oh, they live. They have problems. You know, personal problems with each other. They feel very passionate about each other, so that gives some impetus to the book. And you know, before I forget, when anybody's I discovered I was going to say before, this 6 degrees of separation coming on. I've found that it really is very helpful. So is either a historical mystery or something that takes place where real characters are involved, people who have existed in history. For example, when I was writing Nightlight, I was thinking of Marcel Duchamp. I just started out with just thinking about Marcel Duchamp and how he loves chess, the game of chess. He was passionate about it, and I hadn't known that. And I found a painting of his with a chessboard, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll just do this, make a code or some secret thing in there. And then I said, well, maybe there's a chess master who lived at the same time. and maybe I can somehow get this mystery going through that. And I discovered that this Russian chess master, Alexander Alekhine, not only lived at the same time, but he and Marcel Duchamp played on the French team in the 1933 chess Olympiad, and everything was coming together. And it's so if you're going to write anything that's historically anchored, play that game of putting two divergent people together, and you can start getting a really interesting plot going.
Right, and some, yes, oh, go ahead, Jennifer's gonna ask. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just want to ask, how far in advance are you planning or thinking when you have a series? Like, you're writing your book with your characters, and are you thinking like, I know I want to go 3 books, I want this to be a 3-book series, and are you thinking of the connection or the thread, or do you finish a book and then you start working on the ideas for the connection and the future books?
The latter.
Yeah, I do too. I tend to, I have some ideas, but it's a lot more. I think as I'm writing it, I think, oh, the next one I would like to take place in, another city or this city or that place or stuff like that. But I'm the same as Claudia. It's kind of like so into thinking about the book that I'm writing at the time and what is happening. With some thought of knowing that, yes, those characters are going to be in the next book. I think one thing that's to be thoughtful about is, if you're doing it in a series, you want to make sure that, well, you're not going to kill off somebody, that you want to make sure they're in the next book. I think those things are important. And the other thing that I like about characters, like Claudia's talking about the chess champion, there's certain things with books that there's certain characters that have very specific characteristics. There's been somebody who's got an eye patch, or you remember the really old TV series, Matt Dillon and the guy who limped all the time. Half the people who saw that series remember the guy who limped. And so these characters,
Yeah.
so I try to do something that makes memorable characters as well. Even if I have in the Senior Sleuths, I have Zero the bookie, who's just odd. He's like in his 70s, but he wears a bikini. He wears a like a zebra style bikini when he goes to the pool, or he's just a character kind of thing. So I think having memorable characters does help, and so you want to make sure not to kill them off if you want them into.
And remember their names.
Yes. That's one of the things in terms of what Claudia is just saying. I think it's really important, if any of you are thinking about writing a series, is make sure that you keep a list of, okay, book 1, here's who your characters are. Here's the description of them. Here's
And pages.
Right. Yeah, but what do they look like, right? What color hair do they have? Or if you're mentioning their eyes, or what age are they? How tall? What are the relationships with each other? Because I don't know if you reach a certain age when those things are not as easy to remember. But by the time you get to book 3, you go, what did that person? What color hair did they have? Or how old are they? So it's really helpful. I do for every one of the series. Every book, I have a page or 2 of the characters and their characteristics.
Yeah, I jot them down when they appear,
right?
Or at the end of a chapter or 2, I'll mark down what page they appear. And that is talking about series. Can be tricky because you have to make sure that that if somebody's going to read book 3 before they read book 1, that they'll understand the characters, and that you won't give away the mystery and this, the murderer of book 2 or book 1. So they have to get to know the characters. They have to know a little bit of what happens, like say I think I referred to the first book and the second book as their Cuban caper or something. They were talking to each other, but you can't give away the denouement anywhere. So So you have to be very careful with this kind of thing.
I think another piece of writing the mysteries for
not
everybody,
to underdo it.
sorry, okay.
The exposition.
So I think another thing that's really important is once your characters, the people who are committing the murders, somehow what you want to do is make sure you're somehow showing what the motivation is, why
Yeah.
that person is a murderer. You know, or do they want to murder people for revenge or money or power or anger? You know, there's all sorts of reasons why people want to commit murder. So that's really one part of it, is making sure of that. And then if you're going to have what's called a red herring, you know, you make it, you know how you've looked at mystery movies or mystery television shows, and it just, you're sure that, you know, character C is the murderer. But it's set up to look like that when in truth, it's not at all. So that's kind of a red herring, that they've made it look like that person is the criminal or the murderer. So really good to figure out, you know, give the motivations, which I think helps build your character's behavior. So I think, you know, Claudia does that, you know, and certainly in terms of the mystery, art history mystery series.
But yeah, and I think you have to be kind of careful when you're deciding who actually done the deed.
Right.
You have to be careful not to have this Deus ex machina, you know, this out of the blue, drop the murder on the reader. I think the reader has to be challenged, but there have to be clues throughout. I mean, you can't just trick the reader and saying, "Oh, it was really this guy." But I just have to say one thing about Agatha Christie. I remember reading that what she did with her murderers is she thought of, you know, Mr. X is the murderer from the start, and then at the end she kind of tricks herself and just chooses another of the characters in the book as the murderer, just to. So I mean, there are clues that would lead up to any of the above, but she's thinking all throughout who is the murderer, and then she tricks herself, and hence the reader.
And I actually recently watched a Poirot program from a series, and it was like that all the way through. You were sure one person was the murderer, and he was sure one person was the murderer, and then all of a sudden near the end there was like, no, something wasn't, he didn't feel something was right. Something was, of course, Agatha Christie wasn't right about this other person, and of course it turned out who the murderer was and stuff like that. So the big thing is that if you want to write murder mysteries, you want them to be intriguing. You know, you want your reader to maybe feel that they can help along the way identify who the murderer is. And yet, you know, some surprise, but maybe not total shock. I think it just depends. And then there's so many different kinds. I mean, are you writing a cozy, which, as we said, you know, the cozy, if you don't know what a cozy is, where the person who is helping solve the murders is not a professional. You know, Murder, She Wrote, she's a writer. There's the Joanna Fluke ones that became a television series where she's a baker. And so all of these. So those are the cozy mysteries that people love and are a huge success. But then there's thrillers, you know, which are the deep end of, you know, the bizarre behavior of people, or, you know, the noir, or like Claudia is saying, hers is a combination of kind of mystery and romance. So,
Marcia, can I ask you a question? Because I'm not sure, in the cozy mystery, do they usually take place in a sort of an enclosed environment, like the college town or something like that? Like, or
I think it's
environment.
Well, it's different. It usually, a lot of the new ones that are on Hallmark movies and mystery now are cozies. and they all take place in some kind of small town, not so
Yeah.
much a college campus, but like Murder, She Wrote took place in,
Right.
whatever Cove, Cabot Cove or something. But she went to New York. She traveled everywhere she went. There was a murder. I mean, where it was. I mean, she was. This show was on for 12 years, and everywhere she went, there was a murder. Because I once had somebody ask me when the Dying to Be Beautiful series was based in the Hamptons, and somebody said to me, "Oh, how many murders can there be?" But the Hamptons, that could be possible, but the fact is she lived in this small town. And what was clever about the way they did it, it's kind of like she traveled and found these murders, but about every fourth or fifth episode came back to Cabot Cove because people liked, the sheriff there and her relationship with the doctor there and so forth. The other cozy mystery, the Joanna Fluke, the bakery, they take place in some small town. And the Tea Garden mystery series is also in a town, a smaller city town. But there's always, romantic relationships that come in and stuff like that. So cozies are, and in fact, Goodreads has a tremendous amount of conversations with cozy writers. So if you're ever looking, you might want to get involved with that kind of thing. Could we maybe have some other questions?
I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Good. Oh, good. Okay.
I was thinking about this actually. I wondered, the question is to both of you really, how long it takes to write a book. I have a feeling that Marcia is probably faster, knowing your impatience sometimes, or your willingness to get things done fast. And also, and I know a little bit about Claudia's process, but I wondered about the process too, how long it takes and the actual process, of how.
So I'll tell you, and then Claudia can tell you about how long it takes her. You're right. I mean, I probably do write one faster, partly by the fact that my books are not as long. I think maybe the longest one I've written was about 200 pages, and Claudia's are maybe 350. I tend to. It's not just impatient, it's just in particular writing, it's just the writing style. And there's George Saunders, who is a very famous author and wrote book December 10th and others. But at any rate, he was interviewed once, I was listening, and he said, every time he sits down to write a book, he goes, this is going to be a full-length novel. And by the time he gets to the 10th page, he goes, no, it's going to be a short story. Mm-hmm. So I've learned that I just am right, that I don't have that kind of mindset, skill, ability to write a 350, 400 page book, where Claudia is wonderful with, extending dialogue and having more go on with the characters. But my impatience is not from the kind of impatience when we work together, much different in terms of writing. And it can certainly take maybe at least 9 months or 10 months to write a book. Claudia?
Yeah, I take about this, well, probably a year, but right now I'm working on this fourth book, and weeks of reading, and I keep getting books on this because I got myself into this quandary with studying the colonialism, the European colonialism in Africa and so on, and I have to read so much to get into it, and I have these copious notes. And so it took me at least 4 weeks before I wrote anything. And then I worked on the prologue, which takes place at the end of the 19th century. It took me, I don't know how long to write a couple of pages of prologue, because I kept thinking I must get the facts right, and I don't dwell on the facts, but I feel very sort of obsessive about getting it right. I mean, I have a character in a pith helmet, and I have to make absolutely sure that a pith helmet was worn in this environment and so on. And it's kind of a challenge. And every once in a while, I think, why am I doing this? Why don't I just write a serial killer mystery?
Which is really actually the truth, it kind of what I do. I mean, I'm constantly I have all these ideas of murders. So I just constantly want to write the murder. And then I want my characters to get involved in finding who the murderers are and why they're doing it and how they can catch them, and still having relationships with each other.
Yes. And I think that you do.
Claudia?
Yeah.
Claudia? Well, you can hear me, but you can talk to Jocelyn and them and tell them my computer just went down. I'm going to have to try to get back on, so you keep talking.
Wait, you're frozen there.
Yeah,
Yes,
go ahead, keep talking.
Okay. Okay. Marcia's computer just went down. As you can see, her video is frozen now.
I'll try to get back on. So just talk
Okay.
about the writing
So
the mysteries. Go ahead.
okay. So are there any other questions?
I had another one for you, Claudia.
Oh, but Marcia will have to tell me when. Oh,
Oh, but you can't hear me.
no. Okay, I'm putting my phone down and hope Marcia can get on again. Let's see.
Why don't you just talk? Why don't you just start talking about something about writing mysteries? Why don't you tell them why you find it so fascinating to write mysteries?
Yeah, I'd like to hear.
Well, I can actually tell you how I started writing.
Yeah.
The first art history mystery, which was Stolen Light. It was very interesting. When I was a freshman in college at Vassar, it was my first week I was there, and I was this pipsqueak from Brooklyn, and I was thrown amongst all of these private school girls, and I'm sitting on the edge of my bed after dinner one night talking to this young woman, and she asked me where I summered. I said on my front porch, and she told me, and I never forgot it, because I was so shocked, and it was just a culture shock, that her father had lost his sugar plantation in Cuba during the Cuban Revolution. It was confiscated, his sugar plantation. And then many years later, I was talking to my brother, the art professor, and I said, "Oh, I'd really want to write an art history book." And he said, without losing a beat, "Oh, why don't you write something? Maybe there's a Michelangelo's presentation from drawing from the Casina, the bathers at Casina work." And I said, "Oh," and suddenly it came together this in a very serendipitous way. My experience at Vassar with this the sugar plantation and the present day art history, and I just put it together so that the guy who owned this sugar plantation was an art collector, and these Castro wannabes wanted to raise money so they would be in his army. They did have to do that in those days. They had to buy weapons. They had to provide their own weapons, and so I put what happened in 1958, which was what happened with what happens in the present.
I think one of the other things that's so great to let them know about this particular book is Vassar. There was a group of people from Vassar going on a trip to Cuba, and they gave this copy of this book to all of them.
Marcia wants me to tell you that,
No, I'm back on, so.
oh, you're back on. Oh, where are you? Oh, there you are. Oh, yeah. Yes, a couple of staff members, faculty members at Vassar gave that book, Stolen Light, away to the passengers on this people-to-people trip that they had organized a couple of years ago to Cuba. So that was kind of fun.
So do we have some other questions about anybody who's wants to write a mystery, or you're thinking about it, or you're interested in, joining this? You must have some interest in writing a mystery or a mystery series. Any thoughts about that? Jocelyn?
I wanted to know, my dog might be barking in the background. I hope
Oh,
she
it can't be
doesn't.
any worse than what's going on with the phone for Claudia and my picture going down. This has got to be like really interesting.
know.
Okay.
Oh, it's crazy. I wanted to know if someone wants to get an agent, or is there a trend now in mysteries that people might pick up on that would help them be more commercially viable, or should they just follow their own? How much do you cater to what's out there commercially that's doing well versus what you might? How am I forming this question?
Well, are you looking for an agent?
No, I'm not, but I just wondered if anyone here is looking.
I mean, it's still hard to get an agent.
Yeah.
There are publishers like the one that Claudia and I have that publish specifically mystery books. It's called Level Best Books. And if you've written a mystery and you want to send it to them, they're really very open and interested in looking at new authors in terms of writing mysteries. It's hard to get an agent. You can pitch them and you just never know, you might get lucky and someone would be interested. It's even harder in some ways now because agents, publishers, just like the rest of us are working from home. And so, it's a whole different dynamic. And, but if you're looking to do a mystery, then I would really look at going after and querying and sending submissions to agents or publishers who are specific for mysteries. If it were romance novels, I would do that. Really, the two best selling genres are literally mysteries and romance novels. So it's just such a process of doing that. Yes, John.
What would you say, and this may be different for both of you, but would you say is your biggest hurdle or challenge with writing the book? Is it the planning? Is it starting, where to start from and then the rest flows? Or where do you experience your greatest challenge?
Claudia, where do you, huh?
I heard that. I heard, for some reason, I heard that.
Well, because I have the phone by her.
Oh, okay.
So you want to answer?
You answer and then I'll answer.
Well, okay. Well, in terms of what I find are my biggest challenges in terms of writing the book, I think once I get into it, it's just my wanting to keep doing it and not have interferences. So I think the biggest challenge sometimes is just interferences. I'm pretty motivated. I'm really good at writing in the morning and then sometime maybe early evening and doing it 3, 4, 5 hours. It just depends. So, but everybody, what are the interferences for some people? So for me, that's really it. I have to say, I only recently moved back to Albuquerque a couple months ago. And so certainly the move interfered. I personally found the drama with the politics going on a bit that interfered. So I'm feeling a little calmer about that now. So it's just finding like what are things in life or people and situations that might, you know, interfere with my spending the time and concentrating and wanting to do it. Because once I'm into doing the book, I'm really enjoying it. I really like doing it. I'm really happy writing the book and doing that. Claudia?
Oh, okay, so I have, you know, life problems too that, you know, interfere with things, but just thinking about working on the book itself, some of my niggling problems are sometimes I tend to go on too long with a dialogue, and I have to just, you know, just slice it off and shorten it, because I get involved with these two characters, especially the two sleuths, and with their own relationship, and it really impedes the movement of the mystery. So I have to very cruelly cut those down, and also make the dialogue sort of organically fit with the plot itself. That's one problem. Another problem is, but I love solving these problems. I love puzzles. Another thing is being consistent. Sometimes I'll find on page 200 that what's happening now is contradicts something that happened 80 pages prior, or I didn't explain it or lead up to this incident. So I have to insert a couple of pages there. And these are challenges, but I have to say that I really have fun doing that. I like sort of analyzing things and fixing things. Not so much fun when it takes a long time to fix, but I find those challenging and fun.
Yeah, and I think it's different for everybody. Some people have a lot more life interferences, or there's people I know that they're part of a, they have another full-time job, and so doing that and then being able to sit down and write or stuff like that. I belong to a writing organization called Public Safety Writers Association, which is really fascinating because a lot of them had been detectives or police or fire or other things. So they write mysteries, but some of them still work. And so it's things, it's what kind of interferes and how self-motivated you are. And I am so very much not a procrastinator. So for me.
Well, you're not a procrastinator.
No, I said I'm so not a procrastinator.
Wow. The opposite of me.
I am not, whether it's writing or business or it just isn't. It's just not my style. I mean, if I want to do something, I kind of want to do it. And with the writing, it makes me really happy if I can sit down and write, not feel like I need to do something, like maybe have to cook a dinner for myself, like put something in the microwave because I didn't really cook. Mm-hmm. But so I think it just depends, and so it depends also how motivated you are, and if you're a procrastinator, well, what is that? What stops you? What's in the way?
Yeah.
Right. So, and Claudia and
I guess Janice knows one trick I have when I'm when I feel unmotivated or feel a bit of a block. I'll go through a routine, and it just sort of takes me to the computer. I'll make a cup of tea and I'll put it on my desk. So therefore now I have to sit down at the desk, and I open.
Just keep talking.
Oh, okay. I open the lid of the computer, and now I have to turn it on. And by sort of getting into sort of this ritual, it's almost a mechanical ritual. I get myself going with writing. And sometimes if I don't feel the inspiration to actually write a sentence, I'll take my coded cards, which are no longer color coded for any reason because they're all messed up, and I'll try and organize the plot where I'm going to go from where I am. And so it doesn't require writing, but it just requires some organization. And I'll say, well, I'll put a paper clip around these cards because this is going to be the next chapter. And then just that activity, that almost mechanical activity, will get me into the rhythm of writing. And these notes that I'm putting together suddenly become the desire to put them into it, just open the document and start writing. But sometimes it takes a little ritual to get the juices going. And I also think sometimes reading, if you're in the middle of a book, so obviously someone else's book, not your own. Sometimes just reading puts me in the rhythm of writing, and not that I'm writing in the same style as the author, but it's just like when you hear music, sometimes you just want to sing or you want to dance, and sometimes that's an inspiration and a rhythmical pattern that will get me to the computer and writing. And Marcia is, what happened to Marcia? Marcia?
Oh, here she's coming back in.
She's gone. Oh, okay. Oh, there she is, but there she's not.
We've had our share of
Any
technical
other
problems.
any other questions? But I won't hear them.
I mean, we've had our share of problems with this.
I know.
I know. So, but I'm really, really sorry. And I know that the fact is that both Claudia and I have loved writing our mysteries. We are thrilled to be, part of the stable of authors for Level Best Books. They've been really good to us, and they're doing more and more to promote stuff for mystery authors. One of the other things, of course, that's happening, which is even just the joy of our being able to do a Zoom event like this and talk about writing mysteries, is because, it's with COVID, it's really hard to get into bookstores. They'll sell your books, but you can't do any book signings. And the conferences, I know several mystery writers conferences have been postponed. They want to say they're not canceled, but they're postponed. And so, this is great that you give us this opportunity to talk about writing mysteries and everything like that.
Well, let me ask you a question, Marcia. Do you take into, when you're starting off writing a book, say now, do you take into consideration the present situation? You write in like COVID situation. Do you take this into account or not?
In what way?
I find that I'm not.
No, I'm really not. I'm glad that I have something that I love to do, that I don't have to worry about going to a job that is not available right now because of COVID, or, I think like.
No, I mean, do you work it into your?
Am I working COVID into? No, I'm not doing that. No. And I think a lot of people are. And so I don't know. That just isn't something I feel I want to do. Sometimes I look at things, people and characters. It used to be fun when you could just go sit in Starbucks and, sit and look at some of the characters, and it's very fun, or political characters, or, and kind of embellish on somebody's behavior or certain kind of personality or style. And so, I think there's things in life that we might sometimes incorporate in what we're doing. Like I said, I certainly incorporated elder abuse and some other kind of things with people suffering after being in the military. But I think it's fascinating that we do a lot of when we're writing, we're certainly, part of it is who we are, and bringing in our own experiences or people we've met or situations we've been around. Yeah.
And it's interesting when, I don't know about you, but I find that the more I write, sometimes I find things about myself sort of in retrospect. Like I discovered that in most things that I write, there's a child involved or a baby, I'm, you know.
I don't know. I just found that I seem to have a great capacity for coming up with different ways to murder people. And I just like, I once walked into a Starbucks where I used to know people and they knew what I was doing. And they once said, "How many people did you murder today?" And it was like, oh my God, you know.
Well,
So, but I think that's part of what it is. I think, you know, whether like Claudia saying, you know, bringing the child in or something like that. And I just,
yeah, and using a man's relationship with a child as sort of to determine what kind of man he is.
it's possible. I think it's all part of
person
how
is-
we
is
create our
different. I
characters.
mean, sometimes I see myself doing that and I realize, oh,
But I think it's all depends on what we want our characters to be. I like that the people have a good relationship with each other, and like in the Senior Sleuths, they're an older couple, well, they're in their 60s, and they take off after like, you know, Nick and Nora Charles and the Thin Man, and I always love that the characters, the way they treated each other in the Thin Man, and how they were to each other, and there was that humor, and so the humor is, for me, the humor is also really important. And the Dying to Be Beautiful, I had a wonderful, was it, I think an Irish setter, and to the main character was a woman detective. She happened to have had red hair, which is just so surprising, of course. My red hair, you can't tell I have red hair on this right now, maybe, but she's, and had the Irish setter, and her Irish setter was she called him Watson after, you know, because she has a detective agency. So I think we just have a different thing with our characters and how we relate to them, and it's also just, I think all of you who are here, you can hear when Claudia is talking about her characters, it's one way, and I can talk about my characters, and it's another way. And so that's the same thing if you decide to write a mystery book, and what you do with your characters. And because as you're writing them, just as Claudia said, she gets really involved in the dialogue, and we sort of have a relationship with the characters in our books.
yes. And they kind of take off on their own sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to, I want to let people know that if they want to know more about each of you, they can go to the seniorsleuths.com for Marcia, and ClaudiaRiessBooks.com. Riess is spelled R-I-E-S-S. So
Yes.
you have to be
Yes.
careful because
Nobody ever spells it right.
so so it's Claudia Riess books.com, and for Marcia, again, the seniorsleuths.com.
Thank you very much.
This has been so much fun. I hope people feel inspired to start their own mysteries.
Oh,
And to also know how to overcome obstacles. I mean, we're dealing with my helping Claudia with the phone, my computer going down.
yes.
I'm disappointed that Janice hasn't shown a real picture of herself and not this pretty picture of her. But otherwise, we'd love to see her. But thank you. I'm sure Claudia will say the same. It has been fun and wonderful.
Yes.
And
Thank you both. Thank you both very much.
This was my virgin voyage onto Zoom, and it was fun, even with the glitches. At least it was for me. I hope nobody was too tortured by it.
I don't think so. I think it was fun.
thank you so much for inviting us,
you.
Jocelyn. We
My
appreciate it.
Jocelyn.
My pleasure. And good night, everyone, and thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Good job, ladies. Good night.
Bye.